Talks are reportedly underway ahead of that actual meeting in Europe, but key mediators have yet to narrow differences between Hamas and Israel. Let's find out more about this and speak to Hoda Abdelhamid, who's in Tel Aviv. Lots of reports in Israeli media and elsewhere of a possible new ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Hoda, what exactly are you hearing about what's being negotiated at this stage?
Well, as you said, the Israeli media is awash with leaks about this possible deal that could be reached anytime soon. Now, depending on the reports, we're talking about a ceasefire that could be for a month to 2 month period. During that time, there would be a staggered release of the captives held in Gaza in exchange of Palestinian detainees in Israeli jails. And when we talk about Palestinian detainees, we talk about both detainees from the occupied West Bank and from Gaza. The ratio, according to the media reports here, would be 1 Israeli captives in exchange of 100 Palestinian detainees. This is what we're hearing here at the moment. We haven't heard anything about the humanitarian aid, but this is what the government is leaking to the media. It is presenting to the Israeli public. But the two main mediators here are Qatar and Egypt, and we haven't heard from them. And we do know that there are many sticking points, especially that Hamas had said from the onset, no ceasefire, no exchange of captives versus detainees unless it leads to the end of the war.
Yeah, many sticking points, as you say, Hoda. An Israeli prime minister himself has said he wasn't interested in a new deal as recently as, I think, yesterday, 24 hours ago. Given these differences, how close do you think we are to reaching an actual deal?
Well, I mean, there is that meeting that should be happening in Europe in the coming days. I think that meeting would tackle the very difficult issues because, as you said, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said all along that there will be no end of war until Israel reaches its aims. Now, for example, at the moment, Israel is demolishing thousands of homes along the border with Gaza because it wants to build this 1 kilometer buffer zone, something the White House has talked against, but Israel says it's aiming to demolish about 2,800 buildings all along that border area. Will that stop? Will Israel give up doing that? Then you have the position of Arab countries like Egypt, Qatar, and even Saudi Arabia, who say, well, at the end of all of this, there should be a serious start of negotiations to reach a two-state solution, the political track that would finally bring about a Palestinian state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said repeatedly that he was against that. So very important and very substantial sticking points. And is that something that they will manage to have a compromise about? Another one being Israel wanting the exile from Gaza of the Hamas leadership in Gaza, be it Yahya Sinwar or the head of the Qassam Brigade, Mohammed Deif. Hamas so far has indicated that that was off the table, that was not possible in a negotiation. So there are very sticky points here. Yeah. But I think also from the leaks that have been happening here in Israel, you do get a feeling that the government is under pressure to put forward something to the Israeli public.
All right. Hoda, thank you very much for that. Hoda Abdelhamid, live for us in Tel Aviv. Let's discuss this further now with Lawrence Korb in Washington, D.C. He's a former Assistant Secretary of Defense and a Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Korb. So, these latest developments now, first, let's address that. The director of the CIA, Mossad, the Qatari Prime Minister, meeting in Europe this coming weekend to discuss a possible new deal between Israel and Hamas. Now, the last time William Burns was in the region in November, we had that prisoner exchange deal. So the fact that we have these high-ranking officials meeting again What does this signal in your view? Are we likely to see a new deal being announced very soon?
I mean, the very fact that Bill Burns is there, given who he is, he's not a political appointee. He's a career foreign service officer. He's been ambassador to Russia. I think it sends a signal that this is probably going to lead someplace. Now, I know that Prime Minister Netanyahu has not helped things with all of the comments that he's made lately. But we have let him know that, in fact, if he continues to act like this, the whole question of U.S. aid is on the table. And he also is feeling pressure at home because of what this war is doing to the Israeli economy and so many people called up from civilian jobs. So I think the fact that Bill Burns is involved is a signal that this is pretty serious.
Right, pretty serious. You say the CIA director joining efforts to find this new deal. Now, some media reports have suggested that this is perhaps one of the most ambitious ones that the U.S. is seeking in terms of a ceasefire involving the release, reportedly, of all remaining Israeli captives and a longer cessation of hostilities in Gaza. Given what you've told us about Prime Minister Netanyahu and what we've heard is his reluctance to stop hostilities in Gaza, how does Bill Burns convince the Mossad chief and other Israeli officials that this is the best deal right now?
Well, I think he lets them know that there's a lot of opposition in the United States to continue the aid. Many Democratic senators are opposing any more aid to Israel. President Biden has communicated that to Prime Minister Netanyahu publicly in terms of the direction that we want to go, particularly with the two-state solution. So I think if you get this 60 days, that allows Netanyahu to save face. He could say, well, I'm not giving up my aims, which this is just temporary. But the fact of the matter is, if you can do this for 2 months, it'll set the stage, I think, for more meaningful negotiations and empower those people in Israel who see no end to this war and know that Netanyahu, a lot of reasons he's just doing this is because when this war ends, he'll probably be voted out of office.
What is the view right now in the U.S.? Of course, you've mentioned the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu is ruffling feathers right now in Washington, D.C. in the Biden administration. But at the same time, we hear, the foreign secretary say that they're, on this talk of a buffer zone, for example, the so-called buffer zone that Israel wants to build in Gaza, that the U.S. has expressed opposition to. We hear the foreign minister say that he's opposed to this, that there is, however, room for compromise. So is Washington speaking with one voice when it comes to its message to Netanyahu?
Oh, very definitely. From the beginning, President Biden has told the Israelis, don't make the same mistake we made in Afghanistan, where you think you can change the whole society and do it quickly. And we've also publicly criticized him when he's come out against the two-state solution. We said, no, that's what we want, because until you get that, you're going to continue to have these conflicts. And I think this 60 days is a time enough for people to realize that we can end this war without endangering Israel's security. And I don't think, again, this is helped by President Netanyahu or Prime Minister Netanyahu criticizing Qatar. Qatar has played a very, very important role in this whole situation, mediating between Hamas and Israel and Egypt and the United States.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you for your time. Lawrence Korb, former Assistant Secretary of Defense at the U.S. Defense Department. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for having me.